It always started at exactly 3 a.m. The first night, Rachel thought it was just a wrong number. The phone on her nightstand rang in a shrill, cracking tone that didn't sound like her landline usually did. She rolled over, half asleep, and squinted at the red digits on the alarm clock. 3 o'clock. The ring was harsh in the silence of her little house at the edge of Mill Creek, a town small enough to be forgotten on most maps. She picked up, muttered a groggy hello, and was answered only by the sound of faint static. Somewhere beneath it, almost lost, she thought she heard dripping water, then a wet, gurgling inhale. She slammed the phone down. A prank call? Creeps. Found your number sometimes. The second night, it rang again. 3 o'clock sharp. She answered, this time more awake, more annoyed, and what came through the receiver made her stomach ice over. There was a voice, faint, whispering her name. Not just once, but over and over. The way it stretched the syllables was unnatural, as though whoever was speaking didn't have the right shape of tongue. She hung up, shaking. By the third night, fear kept her awake, eyes wide in the dark, staring at the phone like it was a loaded gun. And when it rang again, on schedule, she didn't answer. She let it ring until it stopped. But silence wasn't the comfort she thought it would be. She could hear something in the house. At first, she thought it was the pipes, but then came the sound of soft, deliberate footsteps moving down the hallway. Rachel grabbed a flashlight and crept out of her bedroom, heart pounding. The hallway was empty, the door still shut. Nothing. But when she returned to her room, she froze. The phone was off the hook, receiver resting against the nightstand, even though she had left it in place. The next morning, she drove into town. She told her friend Alyssa, who worked at the diner, about the calls. Alyssa laughed it off. Some creep messing with you. Don't answer anymore. But Rachel couldn't shake it. She bought a new cordless phone, unplugged the old one, and told herself it was done, that it wasn't. That night, the new phone rang. Sanji a.m. exactly. Rachel's chest locked tight. She didn't move, didn't breathe. The ringing stopped after 6 tones. Silence. Then her cell phone. Across the room, lit up and buzzed with a call from unknown. Against her better judgment, she answered The voice was clearer this time. No static to hide behind. I can see you. She dropped the phone. That was the first night Rachel noticed the blood. It was on the kitchen floor the next morning, thick smears leading from the back door to the basement. At first she thought an animal had gotten in, but when she followed the trail, her stomach clenched hard enough to make her dizzy. The basement smelled of copper and rot. On the floor near the drain was something that looked like a human hand, pale and waxy. The fingers curled in rigor. She gagged, fled upstairs, and when she returned with the sheriff an hour later, the basement was spotless. No blood, no hand, no stench. That the sheriff gave her a long, doubtful look. Rachel, maybe you need rest. She didn't sleep that night. She sat on the couch with the TV on low, the remote clutched in her hand like a weapon. At exactly 3 o'clock, every channel turned to static. The phone rang. Rachel stared at it, trembling. She forced herself to pick up. This time, she didn't hear dripping, or her name, or static. She heard screams, dozens of voices, layered together, screaming as if flayed alive. And buried beneath it was a wet chewing sound, something tearing flesh apart. She dropped the phone and it clattered against the hard wood. The screams continued, pouring from the receiver, echoing in her small living room. She kicked the phone across the floor. But the sound didn't stop. In the glow of the TV, Rachel saw something move in the reflection on the screen. A tall, bent figure in the corner. Its limbs too long. Its face a pale smear of melted features. Its hands dripped thick black blood that spattered the carpet. When she whipped around, the corner was empty. The screams ended. The phone was dead. Rachel was sobbing, rocking herself when the knock came at the door. 3 sharp raps. She froze. The clock read 3:11. Slowly, trembling, she stood, peered out through the peephole. Nothing. She waited, her breath fogging the glass. Then, from behind her, the knock came again. This time, from the kitchen door. She spun, flashlight in hand, and that's when she saw the smear across the kitchen window. Thick red handprints dragging downward, as though someone pressed their bloody palms to the glass and slid slowly out of sight. The phone rang again. She didn't want to answer, but her hand moved against her will, lifting the receiver to her ear. The voice whispered, "They're already inside." Rachel screamed and hurled the phone. She ran to the bedroom, locked the door, and curled against the wall until dawn bled pale gray through the curtains. The next day she packed a bag. She couldn't stay. She didn't care if people thought she was crazy. She would drive to her sister's place 2 towns over, crash there until she felt safe. But when she started her car, the radio came alive before she even touched the dial. "Don't leave me, Rachel." The voice was soft, almost pleading, but the sound behind it was unmistakable, the wet slurp of meat being pulled from bone. Rachel slammed her foot on the gas. The road blurred under her headlights as she tore down the empty highway. She kept checking the rearview mirror, expecting headlights behind her, but there was nothing. Then her cell phone lit up in the passenger seat. She hadn't touched it since last night, but the screen glowed with an incoming call. Unknown. Her throat dry, she answered without thinking. This time, the voice wasn't a whisper. It was a scream. "Look behind you." Rachel glanced in the mirror just as something sat up in the back seat. It was pale, skin sloughing off like wet paper, eyes sunk in black pits. Its jaw dangled loosely, held by a strip of tendon, and blood gushed down its chest as it leaned forward. She swerved. The car fishtailed, tires screaming. The thing lunged, and for a split second, its face was inches from hers. Its teeth, jagged bone shards. She slammed into the guardrail. The car spun, flipped, glass exploding in a glittering rain. When everything went still, she lay upside down, seatbelt cutting into her shoulder, the taste of iron flooding her mouth. The passenger side was torn open, metal twisted like a gaping wound. The seat behind her was empty. Rachel crawled out of the wreck, body screaming in pain, but alive. Her cell phone was 10 feet away. Screen cracked but still glowing. It rang. 3 a.m. She staggered toward it, blood dripping from her hairline, trembling hands reaching. She picked it up and pressed it to her ear, and she heard herself Not her breathing, not her voice, but her own screams, looping endlessly, as if someone was playing a recording of her dying. Rachel dropped the phone. It shattered on the pavement, but the screams didn't stop. They echoed from the trees, from the sky, from inside her own skull. And then the darkness moved. Shapes crawling from the ditch, slick with blood, dragging their mangled bodies toward her. Rachel stumbled backward from the ditch as the shapes dragged themselves closer, their movements jerky, bones grinding audibly beneath their ruined flesh. The air smelled like rust and rot, thick enough to choke. Her legs screamed with pain, but adrenaline shoved her forward. She tried to run down the empty highway, but the asphalt blurred and swayed beneath her eyes. Every step sounded wet, as though she was wading through blood. The first one reached her. Its arm ended in jagged bone where a hand should have been, and it swung it like a blade, slicing a deep gash across her side. She shrieked and shoved it away, feeling her own blood run hot down her waist. The creature didn't fall. It laughed, a broken gurgle, and crawled faster. Another clamped onto her ankle, fingers sinking into her skin as though her flesh was soft clay. She kicked the skull caving under her heel with a wet crunch, but the thing kept moving, its jaw snapping open and shut like a dying fish. Rachel broke free, staggering toward a flicker of light ahead. A gas station, neon buzzing weakly in the night. She screamed for help, voice cracking, but no one answered. She pushed inside, slamming the door, chest heaving. The store was empty. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, painting the aisles in pale, sickly white. Rachel limped between shelves, leaving a trail of blood. Then she froze. Every security monitor above the counter showed her not live, not current. Every screen displayed her death. Different deaths. In one, she was gutted on the highway. In another, her face was crushed against glass. In another, something tore her chest open with claws, ribs bending outward like broken gates. Her knees buckled. A buzzing sound filled the room. The phone on the counter rang. 3 o'clock, .m. Her hand shook as she picked up. This time, the voice was crystal clear, closer than ever, right against her ear. Pick how you die. She threw the phone down and ran. The aisles shifted around her, endless, wrong, like a maze that didn't exist in the building she entered. Behind her, she heard dragging footsteps and the sound of skin peeling from muscle. She turned a corner and came face to face with a body hanging upside down, intestines unraveling onto the floor like a rope. The corpse's face turned toward her, lips peeling back. It was Lisa from the diner. You, answered the corpse, said, blood bubbling from its throat. Rachel screamed and sprinted down another aisle. Hands shot out between the shelves, skeletal fingers clawing at her arms, ripping chunks of skin free. She tore loose, skin flapping from her elbow, vision tunneling as she reached a back door. She slammed it open. The night outside wasn't night anymore. It was red. The sky churned like an open wound, clouds like torn tissue. The highway was gone. Instead, a field of bodies stretched into the horizon, all writhing, all screaming into the air. Some were nailed to poles of bone, their mouths sewn open in eternal cries. Some dragged themselves forward with entrails spilling like leashes behind them. And every one of them was Rachel. She stumbled among them, her mind breaking. Each body had her face, her eyes, her scream. They reached for her, their fingers cold and wet, smearing her with blood. She tripped and fell onto one of them, staring into her own face as maggots wriggled from its mouth. "Why won't you hang up?" it croaked. Rachel clawed herself away, sobbing, gagging. She looked up and saw it, the figure from the reflection, taller now, towering, its melted face a smooth blur with only a slit for a mouth. Its chest was split open, ribs curled outward, and inside was nothing but a writhing mass of tongues, each dripping black blood. The tongues whispered her name over and over, a chorus of wet voices. It bent low, its mouth slit, stretching wider, and in the depths, Rachel saw the flicker of her own living room, her couch, her phone. The slit widened until it was a gaping void, sucking the air from her lungs. Her cell phone buzzed in her pocket, shaking. She pulled it out. The screen showed one word, answer. Her finger twitched, hit accept. Instantly, agony ripped through her body. Her skin peeled back, as though invisible hands were flaying her alive. She screamed, clutching herself as strips of flesh slid to the ground, revealing quivering muscle beneath. Her vision filled with blood, her jaw tearing open wider than it should as her scream turned inhuman. She collapsed, writhing, her body splitting, bones snapping through skin with sharp cracks. The voices didn't stop. They echoed from inside her own broken chest, vibrating her ribs like strings. "You're already dead." Rachel clawed at her throat, trying to tear out the sound. But her fingers sank into her own flesh, pulling it apart. She could see her trachea pink and wet, her own heart thudding violently beneath the cage of broken ribs. Her hands moved without her control, digging deeper, tearing herself open like wrapping paper. And then silence. Rachel blinked, gasping. She was on her couch. Morning sunlight spilled through the blinds. The phone was quiet on the table. For a moment, she thought it had been a nightmare. She looked down. Her clothes were clean. No blood, no wounds. She laughed, shaky, covering her face with trembling hands. The phone rang. Her body went rigid. Slowly, she reached for it, pressed it to her ear. Her own voice answered, raw and guttural. "Rachel, you died last night. This is just the call." The line clicked dead. Her skin began to split. And this time, it didn't stop.
Please like and subscribe channel Fear Frequency for more horror stories. Thank you.